Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another Lifestyle of Eden podcast. I'm your host, Nick Tognetti. Today, I have a very special guest, Brenda Breland, and all of her information, by the way, just so that everybody is aware, is in the show notes. So please check those out. Check out her Instagram, check out her business and everything she's doing. But today, we're going to get really deep on some topics from functional things and some things that may branch off from that. Brenda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. I have a feeling this is going to go in a million different fun directions that I think everyone's going to want to stick around for sure.
It's possible. In fact, I think you hit the nail on your head on the head when you shared my post on social media. Two unfiltered people. Where can this go?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to be very raw with everything, and whether it's relationships, whether it's gear, whether it's whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. Obviously, you and I really connect with being in the functional space, dealing with clients, deep in business, and all those different types of things. And so, before we get into anything, I want you to give a little bit of a background. How did you get into fitness? How did you get into the functional space? And then, obviously, you're doing much more than functional. You're doing business mentoring and everything. So, what led up to that? Maybe either over the last couple of years or several years, or however that looked.
Yeah. So to give you a short synopsis of it without getting into like my whole fucking life story is I was an athlete in college, an athlete my whole life. And after I got done with college, I got married, had kids, did all the things, right? Like that you're supposed to do to be happy. And when my son, he's my second, was like 3 months old ish. I was like sitting on the couch and watching them play, and I was like, I didn't even recognize myself. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't know, like, I was doing all the things, right, that I was supposed to be doing to be happy, and nothing fucking felt happy. Nothing felt good. And that was when I was like, okay, what is something I enjoy? And it was like, it always goes back to fitness. And I think, obviously, without getting too deep into like when you grow up in that space, that's where you go, right? That's what made me feel good. So I just jumped back into it. I got connected in the keto space, was in an MLM, got connected with a bunch of people, Ben and Ryan Lowry, and some of these people who I've looked up to for a very long time, built my business on a keto low carb and essentially pulled myself out of postpartum depression is what it was. And
So
that
this is
kind of just,
when this was after your son.
yep, after
So
my second.
how many years ago was that?
That was, he's getting ready to turn 8. So yeah, so I've been coaching online for 7 years. I started like my fitness journey again 8 years ago, and it's just grown into what it is now. Like I just learned more. The more I dug into my own health, the more that transformed the way I coach, obviously. After being keto for 5.5, 6 years, I realized it just wasn't working for me anymore. My body wasn't responding. I felt like shit. I started to go into a prep with an actual keto prep coach. Love him, still utilize him for things, but I realized my body wasn't responding. There was something that was wrong. Hormone tests, realized I was in crazy adrenal fatigue. My testosterone was at like a 2. It was
Oh,
crazy. And it gave me a bunch of answers. And ever since then, I've just dug into mentorships and learning more and learning how to read labs and doing all the things that I need to do to learn how to support my body where it's at, but then also meeting my clients more at where they're at and what their body specifically needs rather than these specific like keto, low carb, like all of these random things that we know is really not the answer. What the answer is like what's going on inside your body and what do we
yeah.
need to do in order to fix that. So that's how I ended up here.
So you were, not to throw the age out there, but you said there was no boundaries. So you were like 27 when you started all that, right?
Yeah, yeah, right around there. Cause my son, yeah. So like I had my kids, like I was not even in I was in my mid 20s when I had both of my kids. I'm 35 now, but I went to yeah, I started all that when I was 27. I went and asked my doctor, my OB, for a hormone test when I was 30. I was getting ready to turn 30 because I had no sex drive. I was like, I literally could look at my husband at the time, he's my ex-husband now, and like literally like never want to fucking have sex with you again. And I was like, something is wrong. I am 30
Yeah.
years old, right? This shouldn't happen. And I walked in and I was so embarrassed, right? Because no one wants to go into their OB. I'm obviously young, still I'm still young.
No,
And
you
I
are.
had to be like, I have no sex drive. And I told her this, and she looked at me and dead ass looked at me and was like, oh, honey, you're just busy. And she, quote, said this to me. She said, men can have sex if the house is burning down around them. You need to make sure you have your house cleaned and you're not stressed and all of this. That was her answer. Like nothing else. So I felt stupid as fuck when I left because I'm like, I just asked her this question. It's literally, she's just telling me I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm busy, right? So it made me feel really stupid. 6 months later, I did my first hormone panel on myself and
Was it a
just
lab panel, like a serum blood test or like a Dutch test?
it was a 4-point cortisol test or 4-point saliva test. That tested cortisol, DHEA, all my sex hormones, tested all three estrogens, testosterone. So
Yeah.
gave me a very good baseline. And that's the test that I used to learn everything. And then from there, I got into Dutch test and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. Literally just yesterday, I haven't posted it on my story yet for Instagram, but just yesterday, I got a new client a couple weeks ago, needed to review her labs, blood work, and GI map. She has had 5 tests done with 2 different OBs. She's 31 years old. And what the OBs have told her is your case is a mystery. Literally, those were her exact words to me yesterday. And I get all of her labs yesterday. Not only does she have like crazy gut issues, gut dysbiosis, SIBO, just like the list goes on and
Ugh.
on with gut issue, but from blood serums, PCOS, hypothyroid, CRP was almost at 8, high cholesterol, their high SHBG, there it was literally what was crazy. It was, and then 3 or 4 other things. Everything except cortisol. I was like, man, this is interesting. I was like, everybody is usually always cortisol. You're everything, but literally everything but cortisol. But it was the same thing. And so she told me on the phone, or on the Zoom call, she was like, Nick, this is why me and my husband started with you. She goes, I've had 5 tests done with these OBs for years. None of them can figure it out. And I'm like, because number one, they don't run full labs. They don't run
Mm.
full blood panels. They definitely won't run Dutch tests. They don't run ZRTs. They don't run GI maps. They don't do all these different things. But it's the same thing, obviously. It sounds like hand in hand with what you went through.
And it's so frustrating. And this is one of the things, and I will, I'm not going to sit and badmouth physicians because
Right,
they're
right,
doing
right.
their job and not all of them are the same. But I can tell you on a weekly basis, I get conversations from women who are like, I was told to get on birth control because my cycle. I was then, because that didn't work, they said I should have a hysterectomy or an ablation. And I'm just like, it's so fucking frustrating because it's like, all it takes is for someone to truly look at what's going on. And a
Yeah.
lot of these things are things that are fixable and they're manageable. But we're telling people that they're too busy or to get on birth control or to cut out or burn your fucking organs,
Right.
rather than, hey, maybe before we do that, let's take a look at what's going on the inside. It's so wild to me in women's health that we are not taught to be
Yeah.
advocates for what's actually going on inside of our body, right? It's always the last thing, and no one's there to be an advocate for that. And I think that's where you and I come in, right? Is we want to be those advocates for people to say, okay, no, something is going on. These are all red flags. Your body's telling you something. Let's find it. And it's all findable. We're just not
Yeah.
taught that.
Let me ask you. I was actually going to save this. I'm going to ask you a question, then we'll circle
Yeah.
back to it later.
Yeah.
I have 2 clients that I started with over the last couple months that are quote unquote Instagram famous, and
Mhm.
all their followers, they do fashion. So all of their followers are moms between 30 and 50, and it's
Mhm.
all the same thing what they're dealing with. And I've actually got to have a handful of them sign up into my practice, and it's always the same exact thing. And so you had brought up the struggles with the marriage in regards to sexual desire and all that kind of stuff. When you were getting those answers that were not answers for you, and yet you're still struggling with this,
Mhm.
was this a real havoc, not only like on your mental health and marriage and things like that, or like what can you share for people that are going through that, that now since you've walked through that and walked out of that and you know this is what you need to be doing, what would you tell those moms that are literally going through that right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is listen to your gut. And I know that sounds so simple, but I knew something was off. I knew something wasn't right. And so when you're questioning, when you start to question everything that's going on, like, why is my marriage doing this? Why do I feel like this? Why do I hate my job? Most of the time, when you sit and look at it, it's something's going on inside your body, right? You're anxious, you have your cycles are off, you have no libido. These are all things that we know are related back to metabolic and hormone health, right? So whenever you're starting to feel those things as moms, we oftentimes give ourselves the out of we're busy, our kids are young. I
Yeah.
want to encourage people to ask yourself deeper questions. Is that truly it? because I
Yeah.
can tell you right now, I'm fucking busy. I'm busy all the time, but I have a sex drive. I feel like myself. I have energy, right? Are there days that are harder than others? Yes, that's being a mom, but you should still feel like yourself. And that's what I tell people is if you don't feel like yourself, if you feel honestly dead inside, like just like something is off and like you don't recognize that person, get
Yeah.
help. Find someone to help you because it has nothing to do with you being busy. It has nothing to do with like outside external things. Do those affect your stress levels and those types of things? Yes. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it comes down to something deeper than that. And it's often found inside of those labs that we're running.
Yeah, a lot of the women that I get in this space, and sometimes the men too, but it's a lot of women, is the moment that I give them. I just signed up a cardiac nurse into my practice, and she's never been able to figure out what's wrong. The doctors can't figure it out, and this, that, and the other. She comes to me, and I tell, hey, look, you got X, Y, and Z. Every single one of them, apart from just simply, okay, the realization that, wow, we know what it is and we can now figure it out. It's the validation that they get for the first time ever that they're actually like, okay, now I have real proof to show my husband I'm not just
Yeah.
crazy for going through depression, or these doctors, like, I don't need a therapist. No, you don't need a therapist. You have genuine issues that are really running the body and stuff. And so with you, it
Mhm.
sounds very similar to me and probably a lot of these other really good functional coaches and whatnot, is a lot of your stuff was birthed from the place of your own pain. And that's what's given you the passion to be able to go and do these things, to study it out and to help all these people.
Mhm.
So with that, the other day when you and I were messaging, we were talking about cortisol, and you said, I said, hey, what percentage of your people have this? And you said 100%. I want to, whether it's cortisol or other things or all the above, I want to hear a little bit like, who are the main people that you really coach, and
Mhm.
what issues do you see? How do you start to approach these things? Start out with who you get and what are the main issues that you're really getting with all these people?
Yeah, so I typically work with women. They're going to be in their mid 30s to late 50s. It's in that range of it's the women who are truly like realizing meal plans and workouts are not what they fucking need to feel
Right.
good. And those are the women that I work with and I want to work with. I am very open and saying I am picky on who I work with because
That's good.
this job, number one, I'm an empath. Like I very much connect with people on an emotional level. I am open and I know my energy that goes into my clients. And I look for people who are open to that same collaborative environment, right? Communication and collaboration are the two things I tell everyone. Those are the two things we're going to fucking roll with. And if you have those two things with me and you're open to having conversations around what we need to do to fix what's going on, we're not going to fail. 100% believe that. So it's the people and the women who are willing to run the labs and willing to get off of the sprint to the end weight loss goal and set
Right.
in what they need to do to heal. And those are the women that I work with. And when it comes to cortisol, yes, almost you said you had one the other day that didn't have cortisol. I've yet to have one.
That was a total,
I
that was
know.
like a blue moon. That does not happen, by the way. So when
I
I saw,
know.
it, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Out of the 174 issues you have, this is the one you don't? That's crazy. So
It's
anyway, keep
wild.
going.
Yeah, it's wild. Give her a gold star or something because she deserves something for that. But yeah, they all have cortisol issues. And for me, my coaching methodology and the strategy that I work with means healing that first before we jump into anything else. Is these women are busy women, they're moms, they're in relationships, and a lot of their relationships are hindered because they're so stressed and their body's dysfunctioning. And we have all these things going on. And in my opinion, the fitness, quote unquote, fitness side of it takes a back seat while we're trying to heal. And then once we heal, then we get into the body recomp. What do you want? Do you want abs? Do you want to cut? That's when all that comes in. My weekly check-ins with my clients, whenever I see someone saying like my relationship with my husband is getting better because I actually initiate sex, that's a fucking win to me.
Yeah.
Whenever someone says I had my period, my period showed up and I had no idea it was coming because their symptoms are gone, that's a
Yeah.
win, right? And those the women who validate those types of wins and want those types of the wins are the ones that I want to work with. So it's fun. It's fun seeing people truly take control of their health, which
Yeah.
in turn takes really shows them how they can have control of their life at a way bigger scale. It starts with the health and fitness, and they realize their happiness is much bigger than just that wellness piece. And that's what I love being a part of.
And that's why my practice, it's not called nutrition of eating, it's called lifestyle of eating. Like
Yep, I love that.
it's everything, because people are always hitting me up with the two phrases that I hear the most, which is why I have this in my Instagram bio, when people were signing up with me, they were always saying, Nick, I just want my life back. And
Mm-hmm.
the saying I was hearing was, Nick, you gave me my life back. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like I had radical gut issues. I had stage 3 kidney disease. I had a liver issue. I had a hypothyroid. I had an autoimmune disease. I was
Mm-hmm.
bedridden for a year at the end of my 20s. So I totally get what that is. I feel on that. And that's why I was telling somebody the other day, another coach, I said, I never even really heard the term empath until we were in Dallas just a couple weeks ago. But when
Yeah.
somebody explained it to me, I go, oh, dude, I'm 100% an empath. I go, I
Yeah.
feel so deeply for all of these different people. But one of the things that I always tell people too is that it's not that for me, when we're dealing with like health issues, whatever it may be, it's not that the fitness takes a back seat directly. Meanwhile, it really does. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, listen, a healthy body, mitochondria, hormones, everything, a healthy body desires to burn fat.
Yep.
Every time that I have people I get them healthy, weight just melts off. One of my
Yeah.
guys, this would have been almost a year ago. It was November, December of last year. We fixed his gut. He came to me with a really bad case of leaky gut, major cholesterol and triglyceride issues. We fixed that. I did not touch his diet. I didn't touch it after we fixed it. For 4 weeks after we fixed it, I kept him on the same diet. He lost 17 pounds in 4 weeks
Yeah.
without me touching anything because metabolically, everything's just flowing like a river. When it comes to cortisol, which is like a major issue, especially for a lot of these moms, although for guys, it's a huge problem too. What are some of I talk a lot like on autophagy and I talk about the practical applications of that. Like yesterday, one of my mentees in my mentoring program, he brought me a case that I was teaching him on how we go about fat loss, how we go about the autophagy, what we do for that. And obviously, coming from the keto space, that
Yeah.
is one of the aspects of keto that people utilize is saying, hey, you get the autophagy. But one of these coaches that you and I actually both know very well is a very well known guy. I won't say the name though.
Mm.
I've been helping him behind the scenes with some nutritional things in this regard. And I said, with the keto, there's many things that there are like loopholes with it. But I said, one of the things is number one, it's a major stress on the body. So if somebody has a cortisol issue, you can't put them on keto because not only is it a stress, but if they're sugar burning, they're going to, through gluconeogenesis, they're going to take that protein and they're going to convert it to
Heard
sugar,
it.
right?
Yep.
And not only that, it's missing the one thing that we use to neutralize free radicals, oxidative damage in the mitochondria, and it's antioxidants. Antioxidants are loaded in fruits and vegetables, and you basically remove this in so many different aspects of keto. What is your kind of approach? Because obviously, if somebody has a cortisol issue, they have a gut issue, these different things, you're not going to just throw them into a 10-week cut phase or whatever. So, what do you do about that with your clients?
So 99.9% of the time, this involves a refeed phase for my clients. And that refeed phase, I typically, this is like a hard question to answer because I'm very much on meeting my client where they're at. So depending on where the client is and how experienced they are with tracking food or how rigid they could be is how fast I'll go and how quick we can move. But when we're looking at like cortisol issues for the women that I typically look like or work with, it really most of the time involves fueling up their body with clean quality food. So I try to remove processed food. I try to remove anything that could be any of those variables that could be causing inflammation, right? So if they're open to removing gluten and dairy, we're removing it and we're fueling up as fast as possible. I love this approach because number one, it gets my clients' metabolic and hormone health upregulated, right? We're doing those things. Then it allows us to be able to, once we get through that, then we can utilize things like keto and actually be effective with them and cycling them in and utilizing benefits from an autophagy standpoint from utilizing keto, fasting, those types of things. But until we get that their metabolic health and stuff up and it's actually at a good optimal, what I consider optimal,
Right.
utilizing those things is typically too much of a variable in my opinion
Oh,
because we
yeah.
don't know how their body's going to react. So that's my methodology is I refeed the body, get their body de-stressed. I'm not looking to lose weight in this phase, but I will tell you that a lot of clients, when we refeed them up
They
and
start.
get their body up, they're burning fat. And
Yeah.
I tell every client that, like, look, this phase is not to burn fat, but if we see it, great. If you maintain weight and we see body composition changes happening and we're lowering inflammation, that's a win too. So that's my point of view of like how I can best support these busy women in
Yeah.
getting to that destination of getting their body back to optimal, so then we can actually utilize tools like keto, fasting, and those types of things in a way that actually support what we're trying to do with autophagy. So yeah, and
No,
supplementation. I do use supplementation also, natural supplementation with them.
for sure. No, that's good. So as I've been evolving in this and searching different things out and learning through different mentors and trial and error and experimenting on myself and so forth, one of the things that I've always wanted to, so I'm very big. Do you know what the blue zones are? Are you familiar with the blue zones?
Yeah, we kind of talked, I think we talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shared the thing about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the five blue zones in the world: Nicoya, Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, Ikaria, Greece, which was where I was moving, Sardinia, Italy. And there's only one in the United States. It's Loma Linda, California. There are these five areas where generation after generation, all of them live to be over 100 years old, no cancer, no disease, no dementia, and they're all in their 90s and 100s riding horses, running, boxing, swimming, doing all these different
Yeah.
things, right? And my business lifestyle of Eden, I found a dietary pattern that was continually healing disease and preventing and this, that, and the other. I came across these blue zones and I looked at their life and their diet and I go, oh crap, they're doing exactly what I'm doing. But this is
Yeah.
no longer in theory anymore. They've been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so that's why
Yeah.
I was moving to Greece, was because I was doing a controlled study with a group of Icarians out in Greece, and I was logging everything that they're doing, how it lines up with my business. One of the things that I kept getting led to was not only mitochondria but autophagy, and it was the key to regulating everything, to fixing and reversing and preventing and so forth. And so I thought to myself, okay, how do I do this with all these people that are not only dysfunctional with mitochondria, they have gut issues, but they also have cortisol issues, and I can't do the typical ways of autophagy, which would be fasting and which would
Mhm.
be keto, is the common thought process, right? So I did a couple studies, not only on myself, but with a couple clients. And it was these studies that I actually showed that coach that me and you were talking about the other day.
Yep.
We're in Dallas. I showed them to him, and he literally said right there at the table, he goes, Nick, I think you just found an entirely new way to diet these people down and push autophagy while up feeding them. And I said, you know about the flush diet, how you immediately raise the calories. And I said, what if, I said, the reason the flush is so good is because it's low protein, it's high in antioxidants, it raises their food without putting any weight on them, it pushes autophagy, upregulates metabolism, it gets them to still burn fat while eating more food. I go,
Yep.
what if we could take that concept and never end it? Don't stop
Yep.
after a 14-day flush. What if we could keep going?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah. He goes, how do we do that? And so I said, listen, I do not use the term vegan because I'm not a vegan, even though 90% of my diet on a daily basis is a whole food, plant-based diet. I eat fish multiple times a week. I ate fish with y'all at the steakhouse we went to in Dallas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of people talk about the Mediterranean diet and how it's the best diet. It reverses everything. And I said, yes, but we don't understand what the true Mediterranean diet is. The true Mediterranean diet is done in Ikaria, Greece. And if you look at the way they do it, it's all whole plant foods. It's all the omega oils that we all do in the Mediterranean diet, but they're not eating fish the way that we're prescribing it over here. They're only
Mm-hmm.
eating it 4 or 5 times a month. So
Mm-hmm.
they're eating basically what we would call this whole food plant-based diet continually, but they're not vegans because once or twice a week they'll have a wild caught fish or whatever. And when you realize that you're still able for a girl to eat 2,000 to 2,200 calories, or a guy 28 to 3,200 calories or whatever, the reason this pushes autophagy is because lowering protein, like in the flush diet, it's not that lower protein actually pushes autophagy. It's what's in the protein that we're lowering. It's the amino acids. It's leucine, tyrosine, and phenylalanine. When you
Mm-hmm.
lower those three and methionine, you immediately induce autophagy. The interesting thing is that those amino acids are radically lower in plant-based protein. So I can
Yeah.
have you eating 100 to 150 grams of that protein, and you're going to be inducing autophagy because even that amount still has 1/10 of those amino acids as these other things. And so I
Yeah.
started sharing with them some of these people that came to me who were pre-diabetic, they were weight loss resistant and had cortisol issues and this, that, and the other. And so I would put them on this regimen. And then like once a week, I'd say, hey, go feed up, have some fajitas, have some meat, or go get some sushi, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they went from having 0.1 ketones to 0.3s, 0.4s. And then I just posted that thing on my story yesterday where he went up to 0.5 and then 1.5. We just started
Yeah.
reversing these things. And one of the interesting things with the cortisol is obviously you can't diet them down. So I started implementing that where I'm like, okay, we're not stressing them because the calories are so high. And we're pushing that flush concept where it's low protein. And all of the sudden you were knocking out two birds with one stone. They're dropping weight steadily. They're actually inducing autophagy and we're upregulating. This type of way of eating I found to be so healing for all of these different issues that we're discussing.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think the biggest thing too is when you're thinking about that, teaching people how to eat in this way essentially gets them to the metabolic flexibility that we all want. Because that's what it comes down to is metabolic flexibility. How metabolically flexible can you be in your lifestyle and still maintain a diet, or I hate the word diet, but like lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
That supports it. And that's what it comes down to is if more people can understand what you just explained as far as like how to utilize different modalities of food in a way that support that metabolic flexibility, that's the ultimate goal, right? And that's for me, right? When I was talking to Ben in Dallas is I am super metabolically flexible and I know that about my body, and it's okay, how can other people benefit from that? I have my ketone testers here. I have my
I saw your son doing it the other day.
yeah. Yeah, did you hear, he was like, is there a, what did he say? Is there a needle in my finger? And I was like, no, it's not still there. I promise it's gone. But like just learning that of like how to maintain metabolic flexibility in a way that doesn't cause stress on the body is ultimately what that goal is.
Yeah.
Always is how do we get that result? And that's what you're saying. And I think if that's something that's teachable to clients in a way that allows them to utilize that in their lifestyle, whether it's busy or not busy or whatever, that's when we've hit the jackpot, is that we've taught them how to be metabolically flexible, utilize the food and modalities in a way that fits their lifestyle, and then continue to get them those results and keep them at an optimal level, hormonally, metabolically, mental health, like all the things.
Well, and you know what's interesting? So there's this book. We're always talking. So when we talk about metabolically flexible, for the audience to know, we're basically saying your mitochondria need to be able to eat carbs, sugars, let's just call it sugars, and burn the sugars and then switch over to burning body fat. Sugar, fat, sugar, fat. It's kind of like your nervous system. You need to be able to go parasympathetic, sympathetic, and be flexible. And so I'm reading this book right now, and it's really fascinating, and it's confirming a lot of the stuff that I thought, or like your Jason Theobalds have thought, or whatever. Is she talks about one of the main reasons for metabolic inflexibility is our adipose tissue, our fat tissue, is actually where all toxins, fungicides, pesticides, herbicides, and vegetable oils and seed oils are stored because our body can't digest it. So it sits in our adipose tissue. What she started noticing was when these people who had higher body fat, when they started losing weight, all of a sudden they stopped losing weight and they couldn't understand why. They were like, why are all of a sudden the mitochondria not burning body fat anymore? And what she came across was every time the body fat is being burned and therefore it's releasing these toxins, the mitochondria have to receive that. It hits the mitochondria, it damages the mitochondria. And so as a protective mechanism, the mitochondria says, I no longer want to burn fat because that is continually hurting me. So what was interesting in that is obviously you have to damage the mitochondria in that way because you've got to burn the body fat, but then you've got to repair the mitochondria. But then after you repair it, you've got to damage it again because you've got to burn more body fat. So it's like the concept in the gym. You've got to tear the muscle with micro tears to grow. Tear, grow, right? So what me and me and Jason were just talking about this yesterday is one of these guys that I had come to me in January, he was 275 and he went down to 194. So it was like 80 pounds in 9 months. And so I experimented this with him where I'd put him on a typical, you're eating fish 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day or whatever, meat, just the whole regular bodybuilding kind of regimen. And I would do it for 6 weeks. And then once I was dropping the calories a little bit, I would flush him. And then I would switch him to a whole food plant-based for 3 weeks. And then I would go back to the bodybuilding diet and then flush him. And I did this cycle over the course of 8 months. I did it like 3 times because whenever I would have him on the bodybuilding diet to lose body fat, I know that his mitochondria are getting damaged, but then I flush and go whole food plant-based and I'm pushing autophagy for 3 weeks, then I go back to that. And so it was like this interesting damage, recover, damage, recover, damage, recover. And we never had it stop. It was continual and we never fatigued or plateaued or anything like that. So I think that these are interesting things that women are coming to you for, or coming to me for, or whatever, because
Mm-hmm.
at some point, all of these women, they're saying the same thing. Hey, listen, my diet that worked for me when I was 24, it's not working anymore. Why is it not working for me anymore?
100%. 100%. And I think, yeah, like you said, there's it, what all of this stuff that women are experiencing, these are all things that unfortunately are normal things in our society now. And it's our job now to empower women to look at this from a deeper level and they don't have to learn everything at the level that we're speaking. So they don't have to know all the mitochondria damage and how that's affecting autophagy and like all of they don't need to know that. But that's what we're here for, is to help them understand that they do have control, and that ultimately this comes back to taking health into your own hands and no longer just relying on other people to tell you what it should look like and what box you should fit into, right?
Well, tell the audience, I just said, hey, yeah, I saw your son doing the Keto Mojo, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell the audience how I always talk about reversing the curse. Your kids will learn the patterns and behaviors you do. That's why sickness doesn't run in families, behaviors do. And your
Yeah.
behavior leads to the same sickness, right? So tell the audience how important this is, that you have you know how everybody has aspirin like in their cabinet and this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What everybody should have, say, whether it's a Keto Mojo, or these should be household things. And now you're teaching your kids, hey, this is important. You should know how many ketones you're burning because you should be at this level here or whatever. How important do you think that is now, that your kids are learning that at such a young age, to where that's going to be normal for them? That's not, oh, this is weird. They're going to grow up, and if you don't have that, they're going to be like, no, that's weird. My mom had that from a kid. How critical do you think that is? And how much, as a parent, I'm not a parent, so as a parent, do you think that this is the way that the home should be, and for what reason?
Yeah, so this is a hard question for me to answer, to be honest with you, because as a mom and a mom to a girl and a boy, right? Like I do think they grow up very differently and they are looked at very differently when it comes to health and wellness. My daughter's 10, my son's 8. I am of the philosophy when it comes to my parenting that I want to lead by example. I
Mhm.
don't want to ever I want them to be empowered to make their own decisions in everything they do, but
Yeah.
I want them to know why I'm making these decisions for myself. And like my son, like I would never be like, come here, let's test your ketones. I'm never going to poke my son and make him do that. But he wanted to do that. And I
Yeah.
think in the video, he was like, oh, and we tried to do his glucose too, but I couldn't it wasn't working. He's after 3 pokes, he was done. But he was like, oh, my ketones are 0.3. Is that good or bad? And I literally chose my words and I said, it's not good or bad. This is really good information. This is what we know about your body. So as a mom, I'm very careful about how I word the things that I implement in my life in a way that allows them to know that I'm doing it in a way that's healthy for me. So I have a daughter. I do get on the scale. So I get on the scale, literally I'll get on the scale and she'll be like, "Oh, mom, are you close to your period? Did the scale go up? Did it go down?" That's how I'm choosing to teach her about that, because for me it's not about my weight. It's about
Yeah.
knowing what's going on inside my body and knowing that when I'm in ovulation, the scale goes up 5 pounds every single time. Right? When I'm on my cycle, I know how I feel. So I'm implementing the scale in a way into my life that I hope that she takes for hers, to more empower her around understanding her body and not judging her body from the way it looks on the outside. So that's a
Right.
very roundabout way of answering that, but I just try to be an advocate for them to make their own decisions, and it's my job to do the best way I know right now, as to be a good role model when it comes to honoring their body and being advocates for their body, no matter what stage they're in or what that looks like.
But you being that example is good enough to
Yeah.
not only get them interested, that's going to bring them on that journey. Like, for
Yeah.
sure. You
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
I had a client that we totally reversed his cholesterol. His dad, dying at 43, grandpa, same exact thing. He came to me at 43, radically just out of line, and we fixed all of this. What he noticed during the 4 months that he worked with me was, he told me one day on a podcast that we shared on Lifestyle of Eden, He had said, Nick, I never enforced this on my kids. He
Mm-mm.
goes, but as we were doing this and fixing me up, my son he came to the kitchen and he asked me, he goes, Nick, or he said, Dad, can I start eating like you? All it was just the
Yeah.
example, like you're doing. It was never forcing, it was just implementing in his own life. And I think that right there is the key to leading like such a generational legacy to where you're practicing preventative medicine with your kids and you don't even realize that's what you're doing. You're just doing it for you and it's having that fruitful output.
Yep. Yeah, my kids like they can tell you what a good source of protein is. They can tell you where carbs are at, and that's not because I ever said don't eat carbs, don't do that. It's because when like my daughter is like, "Hey, I'm going to cheer practice." She practices for 3 hours at a time. I'm like, "You let's get some good protein in." And she's like, "Okay, where do I get that?" So that like you said, it's truly about trying to educate and be good examples for your kids without, in my opinion, without trying to force something on them and allowing them to learn and make their own decisions and make their own mistakes and all the things the same way we learned, right? We all learn in this way. So it's fun. It's very fun and an interesting thing to navigate as someone in the health and wellness space when you have kids that are young and growing up in a space that doesn't necessarily align with the way that I choose to coach or live my lifestyle. So it's very interesting.
No, that's awesome. And so to bring a little bit of a turn in gears, so obviously you coach a lot of these functional clients and get all these people fixed up and run a very successful business in that regard. But it's not just a business of fixing up clients. You also have a business of mentoring in regards to business mentoring, right? So I want to hear how did your functional business kind of start to sway into business? And who are the people that you really are you working specifically with functional coaches or fitness coaches, or is it just all around business? How did that start to develop?
So I think it like this kind of it just fell in my lap, so to speak, of I owned a photography business for 7 years. I have a marketing degree. That's what I did. I fully believe I was never meant to be someone to work a 9 to 5. And fitness was my way of fulfilling that. It was like I jumped into fitness, I was good at it. I am the type of person like there's no plan B. Like it's plan A and I'm gonna fucking go at it until like fight to the death for it. That's just the way I am. Um, and through doing that, I developed strategies for myself that worked. They built a business that I never believed possible and quite frankly broke generational ties, right? Like I was very poor growing up. I watched my mom pay for our electric bill with change. So I thought forever that was going to be what my life looked like. And then I realized that by just truly taking a passion and going for it, you can not only do things that you have no idea what the fuck you're like were possible, but you can break
Yeah.
generational ties and you can do all these things. It came down to my passion started out helping women see what was possible for them when it came to their bodies. And then it grew into just showing men and women what the fuck's possible when they get out of their own way and take
So,
that passion and turn it into something they're willing to work for. And that's how I started coaching just some friends. They're like, "Hey, show me what you're doing. How'd you get to 10K MRR? I want to know." And then I'm
yeah.
like, "Oh shit, this is working."
Yeah.
Like they're doing 12 and 15K and we're all growing. Yeah, I started helping more people and I built BBA because
What
there's a
does
lot of
BBA stand for?
Build Business Academy. So it was built out of my frustration with trying to find a mentor that really fit what I needed. I'm a very ADHD person. I can't take a course and take it and go and think I'm going to be successful. I
Yeah.
need that guided support and not hand holding, but I say guided, pushed in the right direction. And so I built BBA as like that hybrid offer that I needed whenever I was trying to get my business off the ground, when I was struggling to make sales, when I was struggling to even hit 2K MRR. And monthly recurring revenue is what I mean by that for those of you listening. Yeah, so I built BBA and it was a passion. It truly is a passion project for me. Like I absolutely love it. I love just showing people what's possible. And when you
Yeah.
get in a room with other people who are willing to put the work in, it's no one loses, in my opinion, right? No one fucking loses in those situations. So being able to cultivate that community in a place where people can come together and it's other coaches and we're doing the shit together, is somewhat selfish because I'm like, I fucking love that environment too. But now seeing the clients in there making their first sale and closing 2K and 5K, and now some of them even doing more than that, yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, that's how I got into it and why.
It's not selfish though, because the generational curse that you're broke, you're enabling them to break. And
Yeah.
now time that you get to spend with your kids and the mother that you get to be to like invest in your kid. Like you, like me and you were texting the other day, you're like, hey, I'm in the line to pick up my kids from school. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to hire somebody to go pick up your kids from school. You get to do that. You know what I mean? Like those small things are huge. I still remember my mom picking us up from school. Like I would have never wanted a sitter picking me up from school. So that's not selfish at all. It's focusing on yourself so that you can pour out to others. You can't pour from an empty cup. So I think that's awesome that you're able to do that. Do you work with mainly and or only fitness professionals, or is this kind of, reached out to like real estate or whatever else?
Yeah, it's blossomed more into just online coaches in general. I have some people who do keynote speaking. I have some mindset coaches. I have some other people in the business community who are building communities for other business, or they're also business coaches. So it's in the space where I'm constantly teaching people to niche down. When it comes to this container, this is a container that can truly serve anyone who's wanting to start their business or scale it to the 5K mark, right? After that, we need to get a little bit more strategic on what they're doing and how they're putting those strategies into place. But yeah, I have physicians in there. I have estheticians. I have across the board. When it comes to like my strategy on building a foundational offer, it's proven that it works for almost anyone who's willing to implement it and who's willing to ask for what they need as far as support from me in that process. So yeah, it's been fun branching out and working with different niches within the online coaching and brick and mortar space.
I like with Lifestyle of Eden. Now well, I say very quickly. Obviously, I've got a ton of clients in regards to
Yeah.
just like on one functional clients and this, that, and the other. But it on its own organically started turning to doctors coming on the payroll and them wanting to learn the functional space, nurse practitioners, and like all these different types of things. And not only to get suited in the functional mindset of how you fix these cases, but ultimately because now they're trying to build their own businesses with it. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the cool things that it's just organically gone to is being able to teach them how did I grow my business like this, and how are we continue to where now it's turning into that, to where now starting January 1 we're dropping a huge business
Yeah.
thing with all of this. And like where I'm at right now is full with that. We were taking a good chunk of people, but we're full, but now we're offering a whole new offer. But it's like you said, it just fell there,
Mhm.
and now that passion is so awesome. I love doing
Yeah.
that. But let me ask you, what's interesting, I just said a couple weeks ago, women are all the way up till, and this isn't a sexist thing, but like all the way up till 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you thought about successful entrepreneurs, big time seven figure people, 9 times out of 10, like you're thinking of a guy. Honestly,
Yeah.
there's not really many women in that thinking about that, especially before the social media era. But I was just telling my dad the other day, I said, Dad, you know what's crazy was at this conference that we were at in Dallas, I said 90% of us are multi six figure business owners, or six figures and some seven figures. And I said, I was among out of the 50 people, I think there was like maybe four of us guys. I
Yeah.
go, all these women. And I go, these women are radically successful. I go, I never thought that I would say my business mentor, she was 31 when I hired her, now she's 32, but our business
Yeah.
mentor, I never thought that I'd be like, yeah, I'm hiring a 31-year-old female business mentor to teach me how to do business. And I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I think a lot of people, the people that I know that are in their 50s and 60s that were millionaires growing up, now a lot of them are broke. And you're seeing
Yeah.
all of these people in their late 20s and early 30s, and a bunch of them female that are like millionaires or multi six figures and this, that, and the other. And I said, there is something that people are not recognizing about women right now. And number one, they're not willing to humble themselves. Like me, I don't care who I'm learning from. I will learn from a sloth if I have to, if they're going to really teach me about how
Oh,
to.
but
I just don't care. Like, I don't
yeah,
care
yeah,
if 18-year-old girl. If you're going to teach me, sweet.
yeah.
But there is something about business that's called social media. And one thing that women have over men is the fact that social media is all about connecting to people. It's about
Mhm.
getting to their emotions. It's about getting pain points. It's about getting attention. And when it comes to emotions and emotional intelligence, all that stuff, that is
Yeah.
something that women will trump men on 7 days a week. And I think that's the part that a lot of people aren't realizing, where I'm like, guys, listen, women are leading this movement and I'm all on board with it. I'm like, listen, I don't care
Yeah.
who leads it. I go, as long as I'm able to learn and grow from it, that's awesome. So I think that you started out this conversation, right? Saying, hey, I'm an empath. And then just
Yeah.
yesterday, you shared something with me on my story about the little caption stuff. And I'm like, dude, no, that's so smart. That's so true. I didn't get in the mind of the customer in that
Yeah.
moment the way you did. You know what I mean? So I think that you're going to and are going to continue to help so many people grow these businesses in ways where they'd be mind blown at just these simple changes. It's not even these crazy changes, right?
No, when it comes to business, let's be honest. And this is something that I'm very vocal about is businesses have been ran the same since before computers and all of that shit were even around. Okay. The problem is that everyone wants to overcomplicate it and wants to go for every fucking shiny object that they see and go
Yeah.
for it. And I think that's the biggest thing is go back to the basics and look at who is your ideal client? Who the fuck are you connecting with? And everyone's going to say, I've done this work. And I'm like, no, you fucking haven't. You can't even tell me what they're feeling when they wake up in the morning. You haven't done the work. As an empath and as I just love connection. And that's what it comes down to. If I can connect with someone and we can have conversations, like you're fueling me. I'm learning something from you. Whether it's like how your brain thinks about how you consume content, or it's how functional is, or how your relationship with your kids. I'm getting something from it and I'm banking that shit because that's how I learn and that's how I serve better. So yeah, it's the conversations, like we said, is you put yourself in these places where you're around people and you're willing to just listen and you're willing to put yourself at tables with people that may be younger than you, but are doing what you want to do, then you're going to continue to grow. And that's what it comes down to is if you're willing to put yourself in these situations, you're going to find out very quickly that you can grow a lot quicker when you're willing to be uncomfortable and do those things.
For people that are listening, whether they are in real estate, whether they're money raisers, they're in oil and gas, they're in the functional space, they're in whatever it is, being a business mentor, initially I was going to say, hey, give 2 tips, but whether it's one or whether it's three, I really don't care. What are 2 things that you think are like the first steps, or some eye-opening things that you think are 1 or 2 or 3 things that people can really start to utilize or should utilize if they're trying to build a business in 2024? We're about to be in 2025, right? What do you think that
Yeah.
is?
So I think a lot of people are, number one, I think a lot of people are disconnected from their ideal client. I think they know their
Yeah,
ideal client. I think they know how to talk to them, but they're so money driven and they're so driven on a sale that they totally skip over so much value in knowing their ideal client. So that goes for if you're selling a house, if you're, I mean, I don't know the oil industry, but you know what I'm saying? Like when it comes to connecting, the relationship side of businesses are skipped over so much now because we live in such a fast-paced world where that's skipped over. And I firmly believe that going back to actually building quality relationships is why I've been able to grow in my business, why I've been able to connect with some people who have helped me grow, why I've been able to sit at tables with people who are making multi-million dollars is because I've been willing to build relationships, and
yeah,
same with my clients. So I think building relationships is one of the things. And then I think one of the other things is people, like I said, try to jump from one thing to another too quickly. And I will say I was that person. I wasn't willing to slow down and do the basic shit long enough to actually see results.
yeah,
So, oh, it didn't work for a month. Okay, what the fuck is a month in the grand scheme of building a multi six-figure business? Tell me, what can you do in 30 days? Nothing. You have no data in 30 days. So for me, I had to get very uncomfortable with doing the same shit and sitting in what I considered monotony at the time and getting really fucking good at my business. And that's whenever I was like, oh, okay. So all the
yeah,
things that I thought weren't working were actually working. I just wasn't being patient enough to watch it happen.
exactly.
Um, those are the 2 main things that I think that business owners in general or people in sales or whatever could do a better job at
Yeah.
doing in order to scale or grow their business.
I could not have said it any better, and I will piggyback the heck out of both of those. You know, I have this new Instagram now over the last year. The other one, my personal one that I used to have, had thousands of followers, but now this one, As of this week, I now have over 700, but just a couple months ago, I only had 3 or 350. And I had a six-figure business on 350 followers.
Yeah.
And it was because of the very first point you said, where you talked about connections. You may
Hmm.
People may only see 350 followers. What I see is 350 individuals to make a connection with in my DMs. And so now 700 people, like, you may only see 700, but go look at my DMs. They're loaded up with connection and rapport week after week, day after day, month after month. And I have a couple family members right now that are a bit older than me, in their 40s and stuff. And they've seen the way within 1 year now we've developed a multi six-figure business with this. And they've been asking me about things with social media. And I said,
Yeah.
listen, you've got to get comfortable with putting, before I had Taylor as my business mentor, I had another guy, very well known. He's got millions of followers, crazy dude, awesome dude, taught me a lot. But he had told me, he said, Nick, here's the thing. You really live this life. I just need you to turn it into a movie. And I go, what do you
Yeah.
mean? He goes, keep living the life you're living. You're not creating any content. He goes, just pull out your phone and record it. And so I just started recording everything from the time I woke up at 4 a.m. till I went to sleep. And what I started noticing was people were not buying what I was selling anymore. They were buying me in my life and getting to know me. They were like, no, I actually feel like I really know this guy. Man, I want to be able to wake up at 4. I had some family members say, why do you have to post that you're up at 4 a.m. and this and that? And I'm like, do you know how many clients I've gotten just because of the 4 a.m. post? Because they go, I want to be able to wake up at 4 a.m. full of energy. That alone sells people.
Yeah.
And so it's the connection, like you're saying. I think that is so big that we're not actually doing, is we're not connecting with these people. And I have some people that go, no, I don't want to show my family and this, that, and the other. You can have your boundaries with certain things. You're not putting but they need to get to know you. It's not just, oh, this professional thing, you saw me training a client or whatever. They need to get to know you as a person. People get to see that I have a Corvette, or I like to go drive, or like some of the hobbies that I get to do. They get to know my dog Kaya. They get to know me. In
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
social media world, let me just speak for me personally. I am not going to put hundreds or thousands of dollars in my money in your pocket if I don't know who you are.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that hits on, for me, the authenticity of showing up and being who you normally are
Yeah.
online. And I think in the coaching space, with when we're talking about other people, I think it can be very skewed of what you people put online and who they actually are.
Yeah.
And that's something that I truly value and embody, is like, the person that you see on Instagram is the same fucking person that you're going to see in person.
Right.
And I think there's value there. And that's also why I feel like probably you can say the same thing, is like, the clients who work with me stay with me because we connected, we know each other, like it's a relationship. And that connection would never happen if I was showing up in a way that wasn't authentic to me, and they get on a sales call with me and they're like, oh, you're fucking stale as whatever. And this is how you show up on Instagram. That's something that I wanted to add to that, is like just the authenticity, right? You're the same person that you are on Instagram, the same vibe whenever we have a conversation here, right? I think we opened up this whole conversation with me literally being like, why the fuck do you have that stupid ass grin on your face? Like, you know what I mean? Like the same
Yeah.
conversation, like we can be, and we've met in person one time in Dallas and we've had conversations, but it's the connection, right? We built a connection to where
Yeah.
you and I both are like, let's just have a conversation. Like, what the fuck's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? And that's the same thing. It's that happens because you show up authentically and I show up authentically, and there's no gray area. And I think that's what builds good connections, whether it's with colleagues or clients or just people that you meet on Instagram.
So with that, just being very like authentic and real. So this
Yeah.
is my last point that we'll get to is, me and you have had discussion about this. Obviously, me and you have both been divorced. Sucks, not ideal in the beginning
Yeah.
of thought process, whatever, things happen. Now that you are where you are in business and you've grown how you've grown and you've seen the way things have ended up the last couple of years and everything else, how does your perspective on getting into a relationship that will be sustainable and or lead to marriage or whatever, how do you view, like, obviously you can't just, we were just talking before this call, it's, hey, like, you
Yeah.
can't just date anybody, this is such a fast-paced lifestyle. Like when we were in Dallas, we went out to dinner, me and a few people, and we got back at 9, and what did we do? We had our laptops out, we're
Work.
at the table, we're freaking working till 11, and then guess what, we're up early again, we got our laptops there, we're doing, it's a very fast-paced lifestyle. very dedicated lifestyle. And then not only that, you add the fitness piece in where it's, hey, no, I'm not going to go eat crap all day. I'm not drinking all the time. So you have all these things in the mix, right? So how do you view relationships and what is needed for that relationship, or how to balance that being the, within the fitness and within the business aspect that we're in as entrepreneurs and all of that?
Oh, okay. So I still feel like I'm in the weeds of this, right? Because my divorce was finalized at the end of August. I was married, we got married in 2012. We were married for
12
how
years.
many years? Yeah, 12 years, a long time. So I think what I've learned through this process is that open communication with that is important, right? So having someone who supports you in what you're doing and understands it. I believe that whenever you're in a relationship with someone, it's never going to be quote unquote balance. I think there's always like a give and take, and it's like asking for what you need. And I think that's something I learned through my divorce, and how I ultimately ended up there was asking for what I needed in that situation. So I think as online entrepreneurs, and also I'm a mom, also I am love fitness and that's part of my life. I think what it comes down to is not wavering on what you need in these situations, and finding someone who is willing to fill in the gaps where you need those gaps filled in, and you being able to fill in those other gaps, right? So it's like
Really
it's a
good.
puzzle piece. And I think I've not dated, and I'm like, honestly, that scares the shit out of me even thinking about that, because I am very focused on my business and my kids right now. And what I realized through my divorce is I truly don't know who I am outside of being a mom and a wife. Even when we separated, or even before the divorce was finalized, just as an example, like I didn't have my kids, and I would go to Sonic and get a drink, and I'd get drinks and food for everyone, and I'd go drop it off because I physically don't know what to do with myself when I'm just me. So I think part of that, and we talked about this a little bit via voice message, is I want to figure out what makes me happy and who I am outside of being a mom, a business owner, and a wife. And then I'm able to ask for what I need, or be able to find that person that kind of fill in those gaps and be that puzzle piece. But right now, I can't even answer that question because I don't know who that person is. I'm still figuring that out. And I know you went through that too.
No, that's really good. What you explained was, I don't know where I saw it, whether it was like a TikTok thing or whatever, but it was a really good video. And it was just like, look, the reality is marriage is not 50-50. In the energy aspect of what I give to you or you give to me, it's 100-100. But the practical aspect is there's a lot of days it's 80-20, meaning the wife will come home and she's, hey, I'm just so depleted and I'm so upset and I'm down. Like I have nothing to give. I have 20%. And then the husband goes, then today I'm going to pick up the 80. Oh no,
Yeah.
it was no, it was two people that I know. That's what they were saying. They go, listen, every day that we come home from work, my wife will come to me and say, man, today was great. And that, but, or some other days she'll just come home and the first thing she'll say is, hey, Ron, listen, I'm at like 31% today. And he's okay. I immediately know I've got to step in and fill that gap or whatever. Or the husband, if he's like below 50 or 20 or whatever, I'm honestly at 7%. I can hardly go brush my teeth and put my socks on today. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm 95%. I'll make sure that the kids get ready for school. I'll do. So I think that you saying that, like it's a puzzle piece, it's a give and take. Some days are this, that, or the other. That is a very practical reality that doesn't always look good on the surface of, oh, this is
Yeah.
what marriage can be or whatever it is. But I think that that's really good. I think we can fantasize things and put a false representation of what that looks like rather than realizing there's a lot of mud that you've got to walk through and how you walk through that together and everything else. You were married much longer than I was, but also being in ministry, I minister to a lot of marriages. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I'm always having to teach is this concept called couch time, where every week you sit on the couch, and I'm always big on like communication, always
Yeah.
big. I don't care how bad it has to be, how good it has to be, like communicate flat out. And one of the things that I teach a lot, and it's the same thing in business, I've come to realize is you've got to be able, one thing I noticed with marriages is when the husband or wife upsets the other one, let's just say the husband upsets, the wife will go and tell her best friend what's going on behind the scenes and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, hey, don't go tell your best friend any of that stuff. I go, because
Yeah.
you're bringing your marriage stuff and your sacred stuff to somebody else. And I said, why do you go to them? Why, think about that. Why did you go to her in the first place? And the reason is, if you really think about it, you go, whenever I told them, they supported me, they
Picked
heard
your
me,
side.
I
Yep.
didn't get lashback. And I
Yep.
said, so you felt really safe to talk to that individual. That's why you told them. And they go, yeah, that's exactly it. And I said, what if you can create that same counsel within the marriage to where you sit down, you have this thing called couch time. One of the leaders in my ministry that runs the marriage ministry, he's the one that actually taught me this years ago. What if you can sit down to where it's, okay, Brenda, in theory, we're married. And Brenda, listen, you said this the other day, and this really upset me. You cannot defend yourself in that moment, because it's not about defending yourself. It's about you hearing the fact that regardless of how you meant it, that hurt me in that moment.
Yeah.
So now I feel safe enough to be able to come and do that. So it comes back to that communication and just creating that safe place, because that is the biggest mistake that I see, is people going to their friend or to this person or to that person rather than being able to go to each other. And it's because that position is just not the safe and secure atmosphere or whatever. But bring it back into this, I think it's for, with entrepreneur lifestyles and this, that, and the other, it is something where, oh my gosh, not everybody can match that. You know what I mean? That's a tough one to actually, let's just say this, it narrows things down tremendously.
It does. It does. I think it's, as someone, there's so much to learn from going through a divorce on how you handle relationships, and it makes you look at it from a very different point of view, and it makes you go inward and realize how you can be better in serving your relationships and communication with your, you know, I mean, it plays a part in everything. And it's, as an entrepreneur now, it's even more wild to look at it from the standpoint of, it does make everything a little bit harder and a little bit more complicated, but then it's like, all those things that we just talked about, it makes those things so much more important, right? Communication, all of those things. But it's a wild ride. It's a wild ride, and I'm still on it. So
I'm at both. Well, man, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. And guys, I hope that y'all enjoyed this. We covered a wide array of topics, but I hope that just getting vulnerable and raw before you guys really helps expose some things, helps strengthen y'all, give some insights. And Brenda's Instagram and her business stuff and ways to contact her will be in the notes below. So please check those out. Please give her a follow, see the awesome content that she's continually producing, whether it's for functional or whether it's, you know, being a single mom in this space, or whether it's being an entrepreneur and a business coach as well. But either way, Brenda, thank you so much for joining. I think that we actually exceeded our expectations with this podcast.
yeah, we kicked ass, no doubt. We knew that was going to happen. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys, and stay tuned for the next episode.